You know, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
And it is for the WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
The World Heavyweight Championship.
The match and new NWA Heavyweight Champion of the world.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
Today on the podcast, my guest is one April Littlejohn. Now, some of you may not recognize that name right off the bat, but you certainly will recognize the name she worked under, that being Riot. She performed on the Women of Wrestling television program that was in syndication in 2000-2001. And today we're going to run down her time working in the ring, plus life after the squared circle. Where is she and what is she doing today? Ladies and gentlemen, Riot.
Hello.
How are you?
Here. I'm doing really well, thank you.
Yes. You know, this is probably going to be considered a treat for some people because I don't know how often you happen to venture past WOW's current fan page, but every so often somebody drops in and like, oh, I wish Riot would come back.
That's nice. It's really nice. It's the fanfare after the show was astounding. Actually, I was very surprised by it. But
really,
I've always been pretty flattered by that. It was just something that came into my life really unexpectedly. It was the beginning of my career, beginning of everything. Nothing really major had happened to me yet when WOW came about. Actually, I almost didn't go for the show. I had tried out and did like one episode of another wrestling show that tanked, and it was pretty bad business. And so I went to the audition. I was kind of in a bad mood and sassy with the producers and everything. And even when we started training, I didn't really think it was going to amount to anything. And then we were on the air, and I was seeing myself on TV, and it just happened so naturally. It was kind of meant to be.
Now, you just said something that probably a lot of people aren't aware of. You tried out for another wrestling show that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it was supposed to go on TV. It was called PWA. It was here in Los Angeles, and a bunch of friends of mine in the stunt world, I was just trying to make, do everything that I possibly could to athletic-wise and get myself going. And we practiced in somebody's backyard. They had a ring. Mondo Guerrero was the trainer. He was amazing. I attribute a lot of what I already knew coming into WOW with that training. He's a Mexican wrestler and a well-known stunt coordinator. And, he did a lot of training for us. And we went into, they designed our characters and stuff. And then we never had a show or anything, and the business went under. A lot of girls didn't even get paid. I actually had to take my check to the bank and put it in over and over and over until it cleared. So I wasn't really in the best of spirits when WOW came around, but they were pretty legit. They paid us on time, and they did everything by the book. So David McLane, kept it going for as long as he could. And I know he still does some things.
Yes, he does, or tries.
He tried to, but, and then after WOW, my career started getting going, so I didn't really have time or the energy to do the wrestling so much anymore. And so I didn't. I did one thing in New Jersey a few years back, and I realized how much of a big world out there of wrestling there was still going, and a lot of interest. People that were fans that traveled, all the way from Florida and all over came, and it was really nice. It was a nice reunion.
Well, so now we're going to get into all of that because you have quite a bit of ground to cover, and that you as you said, you tried one that didn't pan out so good. You made sure that you got your money by going there and having it run over and over and over again. But then you went to WOW, and WOW turns out to be this nationally syndicated program that runs, let's say, for the better portion of a year or 2 seasons, I think. Mm-hmm. And you have a pay-per-view under your belt as well.
Yeah, the pay-per-view was exciting. It was a big show. It kind of got to be quite a crazy little family going on. You knew the cameramen, you knew photographers, you knew everybody, and we filled the forum, and I just couldn't believe it. You walk up to the forum and there's these giant posters, and you turn on TV, and it went nuts. It was really exciting time.
I can imagine, because you guys were coming like right in the, not the tail end of the wrestling craze, but you were, I guess, basically middle to tail end of when wrestling was like super hot. So you had a lot of fans that were really just pining for it in every which way possible. And more so than that, WOW kind of creeped in when 2 of the other companies faded away. So there was an audience that was being kind of satisfied through WOW, where WCW and ECW kind of disappeared. Now let's talk about the character, because to some fans out there, it's a wrestling promotion. To other fans, it's strictly a TV show. Some address it as wrestlers, some address it as TV characters. So let's just give a hybrid of the two and explain the character of Riot. Where did that come from?
Well, it was a culmination of a bunch of things. Actually, I think a lot of it came out of my personality, what David McLane saw in me. And around that time, the LA Riots were around. He just got this idea of this, woman coming out of it as a, I don't think he ever saw me as a champion. He really wanted me straight heel, bad guy. He always kept saying, the more I wrestled, the thinner I got. And he's like, put on weight. And I'd be eating McDonald's, everything I could just to put on weight. But, as my athleticism came about, I just became this total athlete. And, I always had this sort of dark streak in me. I loved, listen to heavy metal music in my truck. And I thought about the character a lot of what he gave me. He gave me the idea of LA Riot. He called me the Riot. They came up with the look, which wasn't too different from my own. I had dark hair, but they dreaded my hair out and gave me a costume, and and gave me a bat, and I just kind of went with it. I remember, we practiced, and I've always been pretty intense about athleticism, practicing martial arts, practicing everything I could get my hands on, and I just focused on the wrestling and getting it as aggressive as I possibly could. I remember my first match with a farmer's daughter. She complained because I wanted to, work with her over and over and over again. And, she said, I was hurting her. She complained to David, actually, about me hurting her. I had no idea. that my intensity was too much, but it really played well with character. And I'll never forget our first show. I was so scared. I was kind of introvert, surprisingly, and I didn't really hang out with the other girls that much, and I was kind of on my own, and I was worried that, honestly, I was going to get fired. We had shot my intro video, and I got terribly hurt. I remember I was going to wear a leather jacket for my intro video, and I didn't. I just forgot it, and when you see me break the car window, my arm actually went in the window and the glass exploded inside my arm. I had 36 pieces of glass in my arm, partially severed a nerve. It was crazy. I was in the hospital, and, I had Poison, actually, the girl Poison, and Danger helped me at the hospital, but I really felt completely alone. I had a stick truck. It was manual transmission. I couldn't drive it. And I had to get back to the valley where I lived, and, I was sitting there by myself, and I had realized, I'm all by myself on this, and I was angry about it. And I just remember that first show feeling like they were going to get rid of me because I had that brace on my arm, and it was pretty sketchy, that injury, and I didn't know that they wanted to take a risk on me. And I stood there and by myself and was like, I've got to make this happen. I've got to make it happen. What do I do? How do I come up with something that is going to work for this audience? And I remember I heard my music, and it was very definitive music. And, you know, my heart is thumping, and, you know, I'm terrified. And I walk out of there, and when I raised my arms, when the bombs went off, there were these fireballs that went off right next to me. The crowd went nuts. I've never felt anything like that before in my life. It was like the rock star moment, and it's like this persona took over, and I was the Riot. Like, it wasn't, you know, playing a character. It just became me. And everything after that, every word that I said just sort of fed, and it worked. It was magical almost. The audience and I connected, the cameraman, you know, and I connected. And it was almost like there was nobody else there but me and the audience. I almost didn't even see the farmer's daughter, and I think she was a little afraid of me already, but even more so when we were on stage, because it became my show. And I became like this sort of fight for, you know, the underdog, the, you know, the person who's angry at not fitting in and not, you know, being successful at anything. Nothing ever happened. And, you know, it came from a lot of like deep parts inside of me, and that's basically who the Riot was.
And you decide to take that out on your opponent in the ring. Poor farmer's daughter just abused her for standing up for the underdog.
Well, and then, you know, I think at that time it was pretty important, you know. I mean, I think they thought maybe the blonde pretty girl was going to be your champion, but they didn't know that people were more interested in something else. They were looking for a different hero. They were looking for somebody that wasn't, you know, the ideal pretty girl to make it. And here I am, this like sort of gangly, you know, girl with crazy hair and mean eyes, and, you know, it just took and run with it. The audience loved it. They were excited by it. They wanted to see, you know, almost as if I was fighting what they were fighting in a way, you know, and it was pretty cool. It was a cool experience. I remember later some of the girls were really champs in my book, like Jade, the girl who played Jade. Mm-hmm. She was just the tiniest little girl, pretty little Asian girl. And I remember we had our match, and I did the power bomb, and the crowd expected it. They erupted like it was thunderous, like you just couldn't hear anything else but the crowd going nuts. And I remember like coming up to her, and it was supposed to be the finishing thing. It was supposed to be done, you know, the ref was going to come in and like tap her out. And I said, look, you know, they're fucking eating this up. You should, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. Sorry, they're eating this up. Like, do you want to go for it again? And I couldn't believe it, you know, because that is a hard hit. Like, it's, you know, in wrestling, that power bomb, it's hard on both people. And she's a little girl, and she took it, you know, it was real. And she said, okay, let's do it again. And we set it up, and, you know, I kind of like in her ear going like, you good? You sure? And she goes, oh, let's do it. Let's just do it. Let's get it over with. And then when I did it again, like it just in the crowd, like, I mean, it was like animalistic. You know, people were like crawling over themselves, cheering, and it was pretty crazy. And, you know, girls like that, like those are the real ones in the ring. You know, they're smaller. They're the ones you can lift up, throw around, and man, she took it. I hope she doesn't have like serious injuries from that. Nowadays.
I hope that too. You don't want to be responsible for that, but it sounds as if that Riot was basically slotted into a top tier position within that company, even though you have now admitted that you thought at some point you might have been fired. It seems like it went quite the opposite direction. Like if I had to guess, I would think that Riot was somewhere within maybe the top 5 performers of the company, outside of the champion. Was Terry Gold, Danger, Lana Star, Riot, and and Jungle Girl. I think within that 5 frame, you probably was up in there. Was there ever any talk or to the best of your knowledge, was there ever any plans for you to be the main player or to win the title during the original seasons of WoW, or is there a storyline that was kind of pitched to you that didn't get to unfold?
Oh, yes. There was a definitive moment. They came to me and they were like, "You're very popular. We're going to try and make you champion. You know, you're kind of taking the crowd." And I said, "Well, okay, yeah." I wasn't really asked to do a whole lot of promotional stuff. I was awkward still. You know, I hadn't really found my confidence, even though all this, you know, this magic that was happening on stage. But they came to me and they were like, "You know, we want to put you against Terry Gold and we want you to, you know, go for champion." And I was fighting, can't remember who it was. It might have been Bronco Billy. And I was supposed to stay around afterwards, and they were going to do an interview with me and then announce me for, like, going for the champion. And something happened. So I was doing a jump off of the top ring, and I was supposed to sit it down and put the girl in a chokehold. But I put my arm down, and my arm bent back the wrong way. My elbow dislocated. And it was scary. It was like a shock to the system. It was so disgusting. And then the move right after that, I'm supposed to get dropped from the ring the hard way, where, you know, I hold on to the ring and they drop me. And I think that put it back in. But I was so freaked out about it, and that I just held my elbow, and I went off stage, and they were so mad at me. And I'm back there with the medic, and I'm like, my arm is like locked next to my body. And I think that was the thing that changed it, is because it was the opportunity to do it. And they still wanted to push me in that direction, but they weren't able to announce it. And I think it was near the end of the season, and we had the pay-per-view thing going on, and they weren't really sure what was going on with business. So, yes, there was definitely a championship role. I don't really know that I was looking for the championship role. I was just kind of having fun with what we were doing, and I loved the storylines, and I loved, you know, doing all these little scenes afterwards. But it was definitely on the table. It was something that David McLane wanted to do, and I think it was just a missed opportunity.
Okay, so to fans that's out there listening to this podcast now, you got you a little bit of a scoop. WoW was actively, or I should say WoW management was actively pushing Riot towards the position of being the champion, and that's an interesting path that company could have taken to see Riot as the champion. And I'm not sure whether you would have been the heel champion or you'd been the babyface champion at that point. That's kind of interesting, because you kind of walk a very fine line. You know, it is a fine line with heel and baby faces at that time. The roles got kind of mixed out because, you know, they never, you know, statistically they didn't want heels to be like champions. You wanted to run them into the ground, but because I was so popular, that the lines kind of got blurred, and they really didn't know what to do with me. It's interesting, when I did the Jersey thing, I really didn't understand how definitive of a line that was when I went for this little show, and they were like, "Well, no, you're the heel. You can't have, like, finishing moves. You're not really going to do really big things." And I had gone in and met this girl who was really popular, and she's, you know, beautiful blonde girl, and yeah, and they wanted me to do a powerbomb on her, and I had just met her, and I thought, well, you know, I don't really want to hurt you. I don't know. It's a timing thing. You know, the powerbomb is a combination of two girls making that happen. Like, girl's got to sit up on your shoulders, and then you got to drop her. If you don't, like, it can be really dangerous for both parts. I remember when I lifted Danger to do a powerbomb through a table, man, I thought I was going to tumble backwards because she's taller than me, and she and I almost didn't get her through the table. Like, it's a hard move to do. It takes a lot of strength. My body was just ripped at that time because I was doing this over and over. So yeah, when I did the Jersey show, I was a little confused because, you know, they wanted her to be the champion, and yet the crowd was a little confused about it, or at least I felt that way, because I'm used to revving up the crowd. I'm used to, like, saying a bunch of things, and that's generally the babyface role. And I don't think that was a really confusing one. I mean, it worked, and we both kind of made it work, but that was a much different
way of doing things. You know, and WoW, we had practice sessions. Like, we would practice these moves and stuff, and yeah, things change in the ring, and you have to be on it, and you have to be able to communicate and move with it. And when things go wrong, you improvise. But these girls, they just meet each other, and they're like, okay, I do this and I do this, and then you go in the ring. And it was a lot of timing things that could happen that were off, and I really had a lot of respect for those girls because they were used to doing that kind of thing, and they could just throw it out there right away. It was almost like a real sparring match, which I've done, but when I've been in rings fighting, you know, it's like kill mode. You know, you go in there and you're supposed to knock the girl down. You're not really going to do that in wrestling. You can't make that happen. So I was a little fish out of water in that sense of it.
Well, it is a very different environment. I did have the privilege of speaking to a couple of other WoW alumni, one of which, Erica Porter, a.k.a. Jungle Girl, who did walk in both worlds. She did WoW, and then I think following WoW, she went on to the independent circuit. And basically, to reinforce what you said, she learned that there was a bit of a difference there, a difference between how WoW as a wrestling TV promotion operated opposed to the wrestling promotions which are independent and may just happen to be broadcast on television, where you gotta go out there and improvise. You gotta, you meet that person that day, and you might talk about a couple of spots that you're going to do in the match and talk about the finish, but after that, you're filling each other out. You just kind of do what you do. So you've got your thing going with WoW for the time that you're running there. Now, you said Mondo Guerrero trained you previous to WoW, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did.
Who was responsible for the training within WoW?
Well, it was Selena and Peggy. Selena and Peggy were a very famous duo. Back, I believe, they were in a wrestling group in the 80s. They kind of started it all. Like, what Mondo started with us was, taking bumps and hits and going off the ropes and things like that. It was just a very introductory course, but it was really essential, I think, to my training. And that's why I did so well, I think, in the training. And wow, I mean, we met every day. I was driving all the way down to Inglewood. I did Taekwondo in the morning and then drove down to Inglewood, trained some more, and then go back to Taekwondo in the evening, did some Kung Fu. It was pretty intense. Like, we would do drills and things, and then, you get time with the girls that you were supposed to have your match with, and they would come up with that at first, and eventually as the show progressed, they were so busy that you ended up working it out later on, trying to be creative in your matches with just the girls. But they really gave us the skills to do that so that they didn't have to sit with us every time. And then, when we would get ready for show, they would make sure everything was all right, make adjustments on it, and, give notes and such like that. They really drove the show when it came to the training aspect of it. They worked tirelessly with everybody. And that we got a lot of repetitive training and time in the ring, and it was really important, I think, to the rest of my stunt career because, in film, everything is coordinated, but at the very end, when you're behind or in front of the camera, they make changes. The director comes in, I want this, we want to cut that, and you have to be able to work on the fly. You have to be able to remember, and the people who didn't have that kind of training might stumble, they might not remember, they might freeze, and not be able to remember the choreography. And I think the wrestling training that I got from Selena and Peggy is essential to that because I was able to make changes on the fly. I was used to being in front of the camera for matches and things like that, and things would always go wrong, or somebody would forget something and you need to stall, you need to do a few moves here and there that you had practiced over and over, different spots, in order to be like, okay, you're ready to continue, and then you would. So yeah, it was pretty intensive training. We all got pretty strong. We had a bunch of experimental people coming in, making sure we were all in shape, and some girls really, really rose to the occasion, and some girls didn't. but, you know, you were kind of responsible for your own physical shape and keeping yourself healthy while the trainers made sure that, you know, the wrestling, the timing was good. And they, you know, the better that you did, the more you were able to get creative with it. I mean, when I came up with that twister off of the top rope, that was an experiment. I didn't know. It was something that I just imagined in my head. I didn't know it was going to work. And, you know, we got out, you know, a couple of things, and I did it a couple of times. And Rebecca, who played the sort of mechanic role, you know, on that, she was a pretty good on that. Yeah, because she, you know, this was an experimental move, and we had never done it on just the ring. You know, the ring, obviously, you know, is just boards and a little bit of padding.
Yeah.
But it has a much different feel than a big, giant pad. I mean, you bounce, you know, it's a lot further down. And so, you know, I had done it a bunch of times, and, you know, I was ready to do it in the ring. And when I got up on that top rope, I was so amped up that I was going to just do a single twist, and I just kept spinning around. Yeah, that was a big one. The people wrote up about that a lot, and I was really proud of that one because it was experimental. I mean, I had watched a lot of wrestling, and I watched what people were doing, and I loved, like, flying off the top rope. And it was kind of a dangerous move. I mean, you didn't, like I was saying, you didn't really think about the force that elbow coming down on her. And there wasn't any room to sort of fake it in a way where I would land right next to her and, like, pull anything, because I didn't have that control of the momentum. And, you know, so, and plus you know, she's trying to stay in place and I'm trying to hit a small target, and, you know, we connected. I felt how much my elbow drove into her, and, you know, she got up and I think for a second she couldn't breathe, but she got up and we carried on. And man, that was a tough hit for her. That was, like I said before, you know, I mean, some of these girls that let me do some of these things to them, they were just champions in my book, because, you know, I was very determined to do creative things. I was very determined to try new things. And, you know, the people who were in the ring with me, they let me, you know, and that was really good. She was pretty great in that one.
I'm surprised that wasn't used as the finish, actually. You know, especially coming at a point in time where big kind of flashy moves like that were items used to kind of pop the crowd, you know, the people's elbow, if you will, you know, things like that where it was highly recognizable, something that would be easily seen by the audience and high impact. I was genuinely shocked that didn't just end it, you know, especially when you're talking about that you took her air away when you made contact.
Well, we were surprised. We didn't know that it would work, and they were really they really wanted me to stay with the power bomb, and we just slipped it in there in case it didn't work, and in case it was, you know, off by a little bit or anything. But it would have been a lot easier if that was the finishing move for sure. Just nobody expected it. Nobody expected how it would look, and it worked so well. It was so big. It was, you know, I didn't expect to jump so high, but you know, I was pretty amped up. That crowd, when they're shouting at you and you look out there and it feeds you. It gives you this energy, and it was one of those moments that I'll never forget.
And for those people listening now, the match in question that we're discussing here is Riot versus Wendy Wills at the, I believe, Wild Unleashed pay-per-view. And it was a hardcore match, which begs the question now, did you require any kind of coaxing or, you know, were you nervous at all about getting involved in a hardcore match? Whose idea was it for you to participate in that, first off? Who
well, that was the producers.
Okay.
The pitch came from some of the trainers, but I didn't know anything about it. I was kind of stupid. You know, I didn't know all the terminology and everything like that. I was kind of just, you know, being led by people and who knew much more than me, and I trusted them. And that was the big key to it. I wasn't really nervous about it because I trusted these people so much. And I got pretty banged up on that one. You don't really think about outside the ring how much taking a hit or if you're going to be grabbed by audience members or, getting hit by a chair, there's so many things that can go wrong. And, it does hurt a lot. And you don't, Rebecca and Wendy Wheels was amped up too. And I took a few hits and I was like, oh man, that rocked my world. But, you don't feel that stuff so much right away. You feel it days later where you're kind of like hobbling around your apartment just going, what happened to me?
You mean when the adrenaline wears off?
Yes, the adrenaline, that is a lifesaver in the ring because, you're loving every minute of it. There's cameras flashing in your face and there's people and everything. And then, you get out of the ring and you're still so high from it because it's so exciting that, you go out for beers and things like that. And the next day, that's when you start to feel it. That's when, you tally your injuries. And, I don't want anybody to think that it's all just fun and games. I mean, people who are into wrestling and want to get into wrestling, you're going to get banged up. I mean, I have tons of injuries from that. You just go with it and, it's worth it. It's a rock star moment. You get to feel, so powerful for, a moment in your life. But it's no joke. I mean, you have to train hard. If you don't train hard, you're going to get hurt. And that really prepped me for the rest of my career because if you think that you want to get into this kind of a line of work, it's not just walking on stage and getting all the glory. There's tons of hours, weightlifting and training and, the more experience that you get like that, the better it is. It's not something that you just walk into. It takes a long time. And I got rushed along to it, but, a lot of things that I had done prior to that really helped me. I mean, I was in live shows, stunt shows, things like that really helped me prepare for this, not knowing. I didn't really plan on preparing for this. I just did. And that kind of athleticism is what it takes to be a pro wrestler and what it takes to be a stunt person and be successful at it. Otherwise, you're just going to get banged up and you're going to get seriously hurt and you're not going to recover and then you're going to get taken out. And the worst thing that can happen to a wrestler is that you get a back injury or I know that Danger hurt her knee and, you get taken out and then you miss your opportunity. So it's hard work. And that hardcore match, I was really glad it happened at the end because nobody really wanted that show to end and nobody expected it. We didn't really even know what was going to go on. And I got lucky because both Wendy Wheels and I got lucky because we had this amazing match and it was right at the end and it kind of finished that portion of our career in a pretty highlighted way.
Now, you also said that you, I believe, kind of watched a couple of, matches. I guess we'll call it research. Had you watched a hardcore match walking into that pay-per-view, do you think that you would have given yourself pressure? Like, okay, I got to be as good as this, or we got to be as crazy as this, or anything like that?
Well, I mean, I didn't know what that meant. And I don't know that I know that I never ever saw a hardcore match before. And, I just thought they were just words. And I don't know that I would have been afraid of it or felt pressured to do it. I was kind of up for anything. I'm the kind of girl that you go up on the high dive and if everybody's watching, I'm going to jump. I'm going to break my neck or whatever. I would do it. I was up for a challenge of anything, and they never made me feel like it was something that was going to harm me in any way. It was just exciting. It was a cool thing to do, and I was excited to do it. I think we all were.
Okay. So it sounds like overall your experience with the WOW promotion and with David McLane was a pretty good thing.
Well, it was, and I think I lucked out because David is very specific about what he likes, and he's a perfectionist, and he can be incredibly intimidating because he's a very powerful man in the way he does business and the way he lives his life, and I always respected that. I never wanted to cross him. I mean, you get yelled at by David McLane, and you remember it. With that being said, that's kind of what it takes to get a wrestling show or a show in general to work. I mean, I've met many, many other producers that are intimidating, and I remember doing it was a video game show award show, and I had to do this 90-foot fall, and I didn't want to practice it a bunch of times because it wasn't really safe yet, and I had to have a producer screaming at me, telling me that I'll do it or he's going to fire me and do something else, and be able to stand up to him. And, you know, I think that David McLane and his personality really helped me for the rest of my career. I mean, you can't just get these big, giant moves and work for these huge movies like, you know, like Michael Bay and Transformers and all those kinds of crazy movies without extreme personalities demanding the best. And so I guess, you know, and when you're an athlete, you've got all kinds of people, you know, pushing you and egging you on, and you kind of need that to succeed. It's not a cozy existence. It's not, you know, coddling. There's no coddling in this kind of a profession. And I think that, sure, there were tears and there was a lot of fear going into a lot of these different things, but for the most part, my personality, especially back then, was driven by that kind of behavior. There was a lot of hard things about WoW too after I got hurt. You know, I mean, try putting a bunch of girls in, you know, a practice arena together, there's going to be drama. But, you know, I mean, you can't avoid that. There's emotion. It's just the way we are. But, you know, especially strong women, you know, everybody wants their own thing. And because maybe I didn't necessarily get along so much with everybody, that I didn't go out all the time. Like, I started to become friends with people later on, and then, you know, we would do things. But, you know, I don't know that everybody in that group during that time really knew me for who I was. I kept a very separate life.
Oh, okay. So the friendships that were kindled on television were not necessarily reflected behind the scenes, shall we say?
Well, and, you know, yeah, no, I mean, it's, you know, there's Tower, there's, you know, with my popularity, there was a lot of other things going on. It's not like everybody was just begging, you know, my dance card wasn't necessarily full, but I still hung out. You know, I remember going to the Saddle Ranch and riding the bull with some of the girls. That was pretty fun, and we went out a few times. I hung out with Carrie Goldquay, but surprisingly enough, she got me the drunkest I've ever been in my life. And, you know, it's funny because I was kind of friends with Wendy Wheels for a little while, but she went a different route, and because of Facebook, you know, now I consider her a friend. She's, you know, got a whole life in San Diego, and I keep track of her. And then there's other girls that got into the very successful in the stunt business, and, you know, it was really nice to see them succeed too. But, you know, I mean, it's funny, me and Danger we came into this business together, and she was already in the stunt world, and she's so funny. I don't know if you ever talked to her. She's always a load of laughs, and we had a rift later on in our stunt career. We probably didn't talk for 5-6 years, and it was maybe, I don't know, maybe, you know, quite a few years back that we actually were like, wow, that's ridiculous. Why do we even, you know, why do we have this rift? And we kind of let bygones be bygones, and now, you know, we both respect each other a lot, and we see each other at awards show from time to time. And other people drift on and do different things, and they pop up here and there. But, you know, a show like that is not just like, okay, you have one lead and then everybody else follows, like normally like a television show or something. Yeah. It's a bunch of leads. There's a bunch of stars on that show. So, of course, you know, it's hard to stay in touch. And this was before Facebook, you know. I mean, it's hard to stay in touch with people because they drift off and they, you know, become stars in their own lives and move on. So, yeah, the friendships, they came and went. And back then, you know, I was so singularly focused on making it or doing something out here, something big, that, you know, as soon as WoW was over, that was a really hard hit. But I got a show in Japan. I went almost right away. And then I started working, and I got pretty busy on my own. And, I drifted away from everybody. So it just happens.
That's understandable. That's life. And, you know, we all grow and evolve. And I'm pretty sure, especially in the environment that you were in, It's been said before that the pro wrestling industry is far more competitive than the average person would give it credit for, because they only see that, okay, the ending of the match is predetermined, but they're not thinking about all the things that you're just talking about there. It's not like let's say, Friends, or it's not like Cheers, where you have an ensemble cast. It is a organization where the person who is, nominally speaking, the champion, has the biggest position. They have the most stroke. They got the most money. They have, the fame kind of falls in that. So, a lot of times you're competing for position. You're competing for spot. You're competing for money. Would you say that, I guess without being nasty to each other in the backstage area, that there was this sense of fair competition, let's call it?
Yeah, I felt that a lot right after I got hurt. There was a couple of girls there was one girl, I don't even remember her name, but she wasn't really a big character. She had maybe a couple of matches, and she came up to me and she was like, how's it feel to be like on the downside now, not out of the ring? And I mean, I didn't like that at all, but back then that just pissed me off. I was like, I don't care if my arm is falling off. I'm gonna swing this bat as hard as I could. And that's, it's funny that there's a lot of competition, and I was jealous from time to time and felt lonely that, these girls didn't really want to hang out with me that much. And, it wasn't all, I had some people that did, but for the most part, I wasn't popular with backstage with all the girls, and because of this competitiveness and because of my intensity. And, from time to time, like, especially when I was in the hospital room, and I realized that I didn't really, have anybody that really wanted to be at my side. And it hit hard, and I realized that I was just going to have to put my head down and make do with it. And it was a very lonely place to be. And ironically enough, like, I ended up working at the Hard Rock Cafe years later, and I ran into Poison, who was a bartender there. And I even told her, I was like, I should apologize. I don't think I was very nice back then. Do a lot of growing. And, I think that when you're young like that, it's just some people, I'm not saying everybody, but some people, when you're focused on your career, that's all you can see. You don't see the long haul. You don't see friends for life. Some people are really good with friends for life, and they bond with each other, but that kind of gets in the way if you're going to try to be a star. And it's hard. It's always been impressive when people can manage both and balance that. But, there was, in the locker room, there was people like, bickering and fighting. I remember Slam Dunk. I remember her, like, I don't know, she must have said something that I didn't like to, production assistant or a hair person or something like that. And I snapped at her, and, man, that she's a big, loud woman who, she got in my face, and I thought we were going to actually start throwing down in the locker room because, I just told her, I'm like, will you shut up already? Don't treat anybody like that. And in her defense, like she told me later, she wasn't, it was a misunderstanding, but, things like that happen all the time. And, you want all the attention, you want to be the big star, and especially when you're playing a heel on camera, that can bleed over into a locker room. And that can be, I heard a lot of, don't you know who I am? And I was like, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, I was at that time I was really training hard too in martial arts and competing. And I considered, like I said, I think I underestimated how real a lot of the wrestling was. But when you're in a ring facing somebody else and you're going to take them down, that to me was a lot more real than a planned ending to something. And when somebody said that, I was like, you're nothing. Like, I'll end you. And you'd have fans sometimes that would cross the line of like that reality versus TV. And I remember having a guy put me in a headlock in a bar at the Forum afterwards and having to like completely take him down. You have to defend yourself because they just don't know. And that, you're trying to stay out, out of the ring, you're a different person, and you're not gonna hit somebody with a bat. You're not going to spit at somebody. You're not going to do all this kind of thing, even though you want to. I mean, wrestling brings out those inner things that you would never do in real life. And that's, I think, why I did so well at it is I just allowed myself to be that, that dark person that I was inside, and it was a safe place to do it. But, you go to the grocery store and you get seen, and it's like, oh, what now, and it's funny, too, because one of the probably reasons I didn't do a whole lot of radio spots is because I was terrible at it. Back then, politics was everything, and you didn't trash talk, and wrestling was all about trash talk, and, it was hard to sit there and talk crap about these girls on a broadcast where they're going to hear it, and they have feelings, emotions, and things in their own lives. That was hard for me back then. I wasn't very good at that kind of thing where, they picked some of the other mouths that were really good at talking and doing promotional stuff like that. I mean, of course, like later on in my career when I did a lot more acting and things like that, I got a little bit better at it, but it was a weird thing. It was a weird thing for me. I didn't like nobody wants to be not the popular one, especially when you feel so popular on stage, and then you go back and these people are supposed to know you and they're not all that great to you. But then there were other girls like I said, Poison, and there was the sister combo, the Xena and then the Ice Cold. I don't know if you knew they were sisters, but
I did not.
They were really good to me. Yeah, they were sisters. The girl, Xena, she actually did some really great, she's a great photographer. She did some great headshots of me, and some of the employees in she's a kindergarten teacher now, and she's the sweetest girl in the whole world. And, there was another girl, it's so funny, it's a blast from the past, but she played, she was with, Peggy, and she was kind of this, rough motorcycle girl, and I think her name was Elaine.
Harley's Angels thing.
Yeah. Well, she's hilarious. She worked at the Comedy Store, and we used to go into the Comedy Store, and she's a waitress there. And I remember she's like, in the Comedy Store they have the main stages, and in the back there was at least, I don't know if there is now, like a kitchen and like a break area for the comedians. And she's like, you want to do a wrestling match? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we threw each other around this bar, and people were scared, and we just had, we were just living like kids there, just having fun with the wrestling. And, so we hung out, and, that was really fun. There were some really good moments with that, and I have a lot of, love for a lot of them now, but it wasn't always easy. I mean, I'm not going to tell you it was, and I don't know how it is in WWF or how it was in ECW or WCW, but I'm sure it was a lot of the same thing. You're trying to get not only the attention of the fans, but of the producers, and they determine your fate.
You hear those stories all the time, and I guess the world is a little bit different for you now because you really have nothing to gain or lose by, withholding information about what was good or bad at this point. You're kind of far removed from it. So, needless to say, to recap, WOW, in terms of the locker room, politically speaking, not much different than any other wrestling company that you've heard, because everybody that's listening to this right now has heard, I'm relatively sure, some interview where somebody's had some talk about the backstage or the politics that might have taken place, or the powers that be that determined their direction, or, as you just said, injuries that came out the clear blue, which sidetracked what was supposed to have been, or things like that. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that WOW, in terms of those things, not much different than anybody else.
The only thing different is, like I said before, is there's a bunch of women. And so, when you get a bunch of guys and they're throwing down a little bit and they have scuffles, it's, a lot of times it's not as personal. Like, women tend to take things way more personally. They take them, there's grudges, and they hang on to them forever. I'm sure if you've ever dated a woman, they should never forget. And that's what it's like. You're with a lot of women. It's really hard, and I wasn't good at having female friends then either. I wasn't very sensitive, and so it didn't, it's the same. It's the same, except a lot more lasting. It lasts a lot longer. The fights, the grudges, they last a lot longer, I think, with women.
Well, I've dated and I've married one, so yes, I do understand. You don't want to cause no grudges to take place. You won't forget. And I have to say, you did enlighten me here. Just before I move on to the next question, I was not aware that there was a sister combination that existed in WoW. I guess Tanya, the warrior woman character, and Ice Cold. And even as I'm thinking about it in my mind, I can't even see it. Can't even see the connection.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm surprised I didn't make a lot more publicity about that. It's funny because, Ice Cold came in there and she was just this pretty little blonde girl, very sweet and innocent. And when they changed her hair and everything, she became this whole different persona. And they fought, but they were sweet sisters, but gosh, they fought like cats and dogs when it came down to it because they weren't together on a team. They weren't like a sister combo. They were separate. And I think Ice Cold got a lot more fame than her sister, and I think that caused a few problems. But, the same thing with Ice Cold as me is, she just took on this persona and it worked.
Now, I'm going to ask, since we're on the topic of Ice Cold, and let me recap for the fans out here. We are talking with April Littlejohn, Riot of WoW fame, and she is pulling the curtain back, if you will, for a lot of the things that took place in WoW. So I'm going to pick her brain just a second. I'm not speaking for her, but to the best of your knowledge, Ice Cold went into that pay-per-view in a hair versus hair match, or just a hair match, however you want to call it. And she, I'm assuming, at some point agreed that, hey, I'm willing to take one for the team. I'm willing to have my hair, my head shaved, completely bald, on live pay-per-view for the benefit of this company. Was there any discussion of that going around the locker room, like who wants to participate in this, first off?
Well, that was a thing that was weird, too. I had heard about it, and it's so funny that you say that because it brings up all these memories. I had totally forgotten about that. And I had seen all that drama. I wasn't sure if they were really going to do it or not, and there was a lot of talk about it, and there was talk about who. But, Ice Cold was like, I'll do it. She was so bold about those things. Of course, if I remember correctly, and she should forgive me if I'm lying about this, because if I remember correctly, there was a couple moments where it was not okay. It was really, really not okay. But the thing with her is she's such a pretty face. She could handle anything like that. And I think, when her hair went white like that, when they did her hair, it was not just such a huge step to go even further. And I'm glad they never came to me. I don't think they even thought of approaching me about that. I don't know that I cared too much about my head shave, but I probably would not have been okay with it. That was a really brave and bold move, and it was really good that she, she was so pretty. Some people just can handle that, but it's a big deal for her. For a celebrity, for a star. I don't know if the how much it is now, but I know that if you my friend of mine doubled Demi Moore as G.I. Jane, and she got paid $5,000 to shave her head. So, it's a big deal because you have to grow that out, and then your career is at a halt if you're doing that wearing wigs. A lot of us identify with what our hair looks like in public and especially in our careers. And so, yeah, there was talk about it. I think at first it was this big thing, and it was just like a publicity kind of stunt, but then as the time approached, people got really quiet and they're really nervous about it, I'm sure, but, I think that it worked. It was a big splash of excitement during the storylines for sure.
Well, I hope that they cut her a bigger check for deciding to do.
I don't know if she got paid any more, so I have no idea. I really don't know. We never talked about that. We got a set rate, and then we got more if we did a match, and how many matches we did. But it's different. It's not like in the union for television. There's all these rules and stuff, but wrestling kind of slipped through the cracks because it was considered an athletic event. So we, I don't know how WWF works, but back then we weren't making a ton. It wasn't life-changing money, you know. I mean,
okay,
we didn't make that much.
Now let's talk about, since you bring that up, let's talk about the pay scale, the money. Now I don't need specifics because I don't, we don't have to get off in anybody's business. Sorry for people out there listening and saying, damn it, why didn't you let her talk about it? But we don't need to go off into the total specifics. But here you just said, okay, it wasn't life-changing money, which a lot of times, surprise, surprise, wrestling doesn't do that. But my question is, how exactly could WoW slip through the cracks of that when, yes, true, it was an athletic event, but on the outside looking in, it looks primarily as a TV show that happens to be wrestling, opposed to stuff that I shoot where it is wrestling that goes to TV.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing is, like, and I don't know if we were told the truth or anything. A lot of us were young, and I mean, there was some girls that were smarter than that, but I was under the understanding that it's an exemption, and so they don't have to pay like normal union rates. It was, like you got paid bumps and stuff like I said, if you got a match and you did a match, sometimes I did 2 matches, so I would get paid for each match. And then you got paid an hourly rate when you were training. Like I said, we only trained 2 hours a day, so it wasn't enough to feed you. You couldn't just do that. We all had other jobs. Mm-hmm. I was working up at Six Flags, the Batman Robin show during the time, and I had another, I think, delivery job for a restaurant at the time. And, we were all doing other things because it wasn't enough. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the union rules are now, but we were told that it was exempt. I'm sure that has changed because nobody expected WoW to be this big television show. And, we definitely got paid a lot less than I would have gotten paid for a television show much later on in my career. And we didn't get paid anything after. So I don't think they ever reran it, but if they reran it, it's not likely to get that kind of thing. We just had a pretty straightforward contract. And you know what? Honestly, most of us were fine with it. I don't know of anybody who had a major problem with it. We were also young and excited about this show that was going on that we were more concerned about doing well and then sort of the longevity. We just really trusted the producers, and I didn't know much about it. I didn't have an agent at the time, and I didn't have anybody. It wasn't like I had an agent that got me this gig. Like, somebody told me about this audition and I went. And then I never expected anything of it, and I never expected it to even be on TV. And so it was all very shocking. By the time we got to the pay-per-view, it was over. Had we gone another season, had we had agents get involved, managers and such, things would have been different. Contracts would have been renegotiated. I probably would have wanted something that sustained me. And I was living in a, crappy 1-bedroom apartment with, faux leather, everything. I didn't need much. I didn't require much at the time. And I definitely, where I come from is not glamorous. I came from a town in the Midwest, and any money that I was making was great for me. It was more than enough and fine. It fed me, let me go to the bar with my friends from time to time, and that was it. But it definitely didn't pay all my bills. I still had to have other jobs, and I imagine other people did too. Like the Warrior Princess, she was a photographer, and Danger is a stunt girl. She did a Western show at Universal, I believe, and she had worked in film already. She was much further along in her career. And I think Jungle Girl was a trainer. So everybody had all these different things that they were doing. And so this was just something on the side that we did. And it didn't take up so much time in our regular day because the practice sessions were really short. They scheduled us throughout the day. We got like 2-hour time slots, and we got paid for it. Okay. So I don't know. Maybe the other girls renegotiated. Maybe everybody else was getting paid more than I was. I don't know. I have no idea. Well, but I've never seen a dime from that since, and it was more of like a really amazing thing for me to happen.
Well, it sounds basically along the lines of what most wrestling is. I mean, the wrestling world or the industry, especially today, there are very few places to earn a full-time, I don't have to do anything else in my life other than wrestle. You know, there's very few places to do that. And you got WWE, you got Ring of Honor, you got TNA, and I think Japan and Mexico. That's about it. I should say AAA and New Japan. That's basically it. So I don't think WoW was any and Lucha Underground. Sorry, I think Lucha Underground qualifies today. But I don't think WoW is any different than what those places were doing. Did that ever compromise you, or because I ask this because I know there are some people on the independent circuit as they're kind of rising up, really don't have any issues with, hey, I got to go wrestle on the weekend or something like that, and their bosses are fine with it or something, and they work their jobs around to the point that they can actually go and wrestle. Now, when you're on television, that seems to be that could present an issue. One, because now you're on TV and you're a recognizable face and you're someplace else and they're like, hey, aren't you so-and-so? Do things like that ever compromise your ability to do your job the way that you want it to? Did it ever just get on your nerves? Did you ever hear about it getting on somebody else's nerves?
Well, I think, as far as the wrestling, because it was a rather short time in my career, I guess if I might have to get big as like Dwayne Johnson or something, and they're making money off of your face and some stuff that you did a long time ago, I probably would have an issue with that. But David McLane's never really, abused that. For me, at least, I've never really seen, T-shirts still being sold out there, and they probably are. People ask me, why aren't there T-shirts and, promotional things still out there? And I kind of ran out of all the things that I, kind of kept as keepsakes. But I suppose if I, all of a sudden became a really famous actress or moved on to something big and my face was all over and they resurfaced, that might cause a problem. But, I think it's kind of up to the wrestler, because wrestling is still not, it's mainstream, but it's not considered just like a normal TV show all the time. And I don't really know how WWF does it, but you make your own contract, you're in it long enough, you find out what other people are making it, and you hope that you're comfortable. But if you're on these like independent circles, you have to just kind of talk to the promoter and, see what's fair. And when I did the Jersey show, it was more than fair. He treated me really great. He brought me out there, paid me on time and, and what we agreed to, and I was happy. And I think that that's kind of up to the wrestler, the performer, to make that decision. Now, after that show, I got calls for a lot of different events in Atlantic City and everything, and I chose to go a different route just because I felt like, it wasn't going to be worth it. It was almost a little too late for some of that stuff because of the way they do wrestling, how dangerous it is, how on the fly it is. And I've had so many injuries that getting into a ring with somebody that I don't know, there's so many possibilities of me hurting somebody or somebody hurting me that I just don't need to add to it for that little of money. David McLane had approached me he was going to start another show, and I said I would keep open to it because I feel that I owe him a lot of my beginnings, and I had a lot of fun, and it would be something fun. But the wrestling is not an easy thing for longevity, and I don't think that I could probably pull off those high-flying moves on a regular basis. It would have to be, a little bit here and there because of the injuries that I've had.
Okay, so that you'd have to be a little bit more calculated.
Yeah, and now I would. It's different. You get a bunch of people who are just beginning and they're wide-eyed and everything like that. You throw them a bone here and there, and it's enough. That's fine. But nowadays, it's different. I'd need a lot more money. I would need it to be worth it. I would need it to pay some bills. I would need, some assurance that, I'm not going to just have somebody come and cold cock me and it's going to turn into a huge brawl because, I don't need that. nobody does. You know, I've done it. I've been there. I've done it. And yeah, you know, I've been tainted. You know, I've made a lot of money since then. I've worked in television and film, and I had no idea I could make that kind of money. I had no idea. You know, I didn't even know that was a possibility for me. So, you know, I like to look back on the wrestling and the money. I mean, it wasn't really about the money for me. It was never about the money. It was doing the show. It was
the experience.
You know, feeling like that. There's, like I had said before, there's no greater feeling than having a crowd like with you and, you know, just egging you on, and that's what it was all about for me.
Okay, so, well, you know, you've moved into one of the questions. I was going to say a lot of the original cast have not come back to the revamped WoW, but apparently you were contacted, yes?
Yeah, much later. They did a Vegas show. It was funny because it was basically like Selena found me on Facebook. And I was like, oh, hey, you know, that's cool. And I don't think that they knew where I was, honestly. You know, I mean, I honestly, I'm surprised that they actually knew my real name because they called me Riot. Like, you didn't call people by their real names. You call them by their character names, you know. And so sometimes you're like, oh, who was that girl? What was her real name? You just didn't know. And I think that was just a happenstance. I don't think that they knew where I was or about me, because there was a lot of girls that came back and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know much about it until I did the wrestling show in Jersey, where people were talking about how many girls like auditioned for some event that they had in Vegas. And that's when David McLane and some of his promoters contacted me and asked me if I was interested. I said, sure, you know, I mean, you know, let me know what you need and we'll work something out.
Okay. Now, while I'm going to assume, as it pertains to the story that you just told me, that you did receive offers. After you did your Jersey show, you appeared, wrestled Angelina Love. The offers kind of came in from other promoters, but you weren't really interested given the injuries that you are housing at this time. While I'm going to assume would have been the exception to the rule if you were going to go back into wrestling at all.
Well, I'll tell you why. There's a lot of, as I'm sure you know, there's a lot of stuff that is in the wrestling business that's not okay with me. Like, I'm not interested in wrestling in somebody's living room for somebody online, you know, like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it takes trust. It takes trust. Like, Dave McLane likes girls who look good, but he never exploited us sexually. At least he never exploited me sexually in that way. And I never tolerate that kind of thing. You know, I'm not about that. Like, I liked looking good. I liked appearing in a way that was pleasing and stuff like that. But, you know, I was never about that kind of raunchy thing. And there were other girls that were, and, you know, to each his own. Gosh, you know, some of those girls were so incredible looking that, you know, why wouldn't you? But it just wasn't me. And it's a comfort level, I think. You know, some people who approached me, I didn't find it to be something that I was interested because there was flavors of that. Or even if it was completely innocent. And even when the Jersey show, when he approached me, I wasn't sure about it, but, you know, I looked him up and he was a really nice guy and he ran a pretty good show, and, you know, there was no funny business. So I was all about that. Okay. And, it's a mixed world. Like, there's the reputable wrestling and then there's not. And plus it opens up a whole new door to things, that I feel like it wasn't going in the direction that I wanted to go. Like, I wouldn't mind being a part of a wrestling show as like, a character or an announcer or, you know, somebody, you know, like those ex-football players that come back and talk about that kind of thing and, you know, adding to the action and drama. But, you know, getting in the ring and doing a whole bunch of high-flying moves like that, I don't think my body can take it anymore. I mean, I've got a knee that I just had surgery on. I've got back injuries. I've got a fake collarbone. Like, I mean, you know, I've had friends that have died because of too many concussions, and, you know, that kind of thing you just can't do forever. I mean, I could, but, you know, kind of made a deal with myself that I didn't want to do that kind of thing. But I'm so pro wrestling in that way where it's such a fun thing. I love the fans. Fans are the best fans ever. They get so into it. They make dolls. I've had pictures of me that have been so awesome that I didn't even know existed. And, you know, that's the really great part of it. And I miss that. I do miss that kind of connection with people who really loved that show. And I'm sad that I wasn't able to bring that back. I did, you know, I was so interested in writing and possibly the producing of something like this that I had interviews with WCW when it was still in existence, develop characters. And I really wanted to do that. I wanted to get involved with WWF in that way, but it was really, once that the show went under, it was really hard to find those avenues. And so those kind of opportunities fizzled out. But that would be something that I would really be interested in. I wouldn't mind bringing the Riot back for that kind of a thing, or, you know, having, I thought a really good idea would be, you know, that show, the fighter show where it's kind of like a reality show in MMA, you know.
Ultimate Fighter.
Something like that for wrestling, where you would have like these big wrestlers that were around a long time ago mentoring new ones and what to do. And I thought that would be a really cool idea, because then I could bring what I knew, that experience that I had, my connection with the audience, into somebody who is hungry and fresh body, ready to go and take the hits and, you know, making of the new wrestling star, that kind of thing. That would be very interesting to me. But I don't know how, it's hard to maintain the figure, the athleticism, and that kind of way. And I took a lot of chances with my body. We all did. We were young, you bounce. I mean, I remember getting concussion after concussion because we would do bump offs, you know, where you see how high you can bump, and it'd be like a winner, and it's so competitive that, you know, you go as hard as you can, as big as you can, but, you know, my body can't take that anymore, and I don't want it to.
I would guess not. And for anyone that is confused as to why April/Riot is saying that her body is banged up, recap, she is also a stunt woman. So there's a lot of punishment that has been put on the body outside of just the punishment that happened within a wrestling ring. So you have used your physicality to earn a living for quite some time.
Yes.
And that, I'm sure, given the injury list that you just read off, had to have been quite interesting on some days when you're busting your collarbone or busting your knees or whatever the case may be. That doesn't sound fun in the least.
Well, I mean, if you don't think about it, like you do these things, it's so exciting. It's so cool. Like I busted my collarbone because I misjudged an ejection from a vehicle. And, you know, I mean, you're getting thrown 15 to 30 miles an hour. I mean, it probably wasn't 30. I would say we've got up to 20 from a vehicle, and you see it on TV and you do it and it's exciting, and you know, you one little mess up and you break something, or, you know, we have these things called air rams, and it's a pressurized device that throws you up in the air when you gotta fall, and you know, you think, oh, I'm really high up in the air, I'm gonna fall in the concrete, you know, what bone do I want to break? And, you know, I don't know, that's, call me crazy, and I probably am. When I talk to other people, they're like, do things like that. And I guess I just thought that there's a lot of people in the stunt industry that do that kind of thing. They have something to prove, and I did too, you know. I mean, you try to be technical about it, but things go wrong, and you break things, and things go terribly wrong sometimes. And thankfully, I've been really lucky that most of my injuries haven't been really life-threatening. But the best stunt people, you know, you get a collection of injuries, you have a collection of stories to go with it, but in the end, you know, you try to be smart about physics of it, and you try to make those things not happen. But they do, they happen. And I always knew, I don't know that I chose stunts as a profession, more that it chose me, but I'm grateful for it. And I kind of got in there, and I had a lot of people teaching me different things and experimenting with other things, and a lot of it is just, you know, this sort of, you know, brazen bravery, I guess, if you will, to get the job done and make sure the shot looks good. And, you know, things happen. And I never thought that I would do it forever. You know, it wasn't something that I could see my body taking for a long, long time. And so you try to get into coordinating or writing or acting or other things, and so you can stay within the film business. But, there are a few people that have made a long, long career of it, but they go into coordinating. They coordinate other people doing the action. They're smart about it. They, take care of themselves in a much different way. But a lot of us, we have a collection of injuries that hurt as you get older, and they nag at you, and some even worse. But that's what it is. You're going to get into this industry. You're not going to do everything forever. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. And hopefully, if I had known, I would have been prepared. I mean, I knew I was going to do it forever, but if I really thought about it, I would have found a way out. I lived loud and large for a long period of time, and I didn't really plan for, what's going to happen when you get a little bit older and what are you going to do with your life.
You didn't produce that plan B, at least not right away.
Yeah, plan B. My mom told me I was going to need a plan B when I told her I wanted to be in television and film, and I'm like, no way, man.
Well, so you made it.
But, no, go ahead.
I'll say you made it. You didn't need a plan B. You got in there. You got to your,
I did.
Your TV, you got the pay-per-view, you got movies. So no plan B was necessary at this point. Now, I'm going to root back around to WoW for the tail end of its run. Do you have any idea why WoW ceased production in its original season?
Well, David McLane produced a big show. We had everything. We were at the Forum. We had giant publicity. We were on a network television. Well, I don't know if UPN was considered network, but it was, on the top 13. You didn't have to get cable for it. And when we had big food spreads for us and tons of hair, makeup, and all kinds of stuff, it was real big and flashy. And I don't know why it went under. It was a really popular show. It could have been a lot of things. It could have been the Forum. The Forum has notoriously been wishy-washy about what they wanted there, who was going to be there, and incredibly expensive and hard to produce. It could have been investors. I don't know who the investors were, but, when it comes to producing, as you know, it's fickle. You get people who want to be a part of it, and then they don't. And I noticed that as we did production, so slowly the big luxurious things that we had would be cut back. So they were obviously having some money troubles. And the payoff wasn't giving him what he needed to continue producing. I don't know, maybe David just got tired of it at that point. Maybe he had a different direction that he was going to go. And I know there was talk of, in the end, about like producing it in Vegas, moving the whole show to Vegas. So, I think that he had wanted that ultimately because WoW would have done really well in Vegas. It would have had a show there for a long time if we had been in Vegas. The Forum is just a really tricky place to produce a television show.
I would imagine so. I don't know what the seating capacity of the Forum is, off the top of my head at least. But I do know that the second season, even though it's 15 years apart, I believe, but the second season of WoW actually did produce in Vegas. I did see a match from the new girls, I guess, if you want to call it that. I guess Vegas was a thing, and it's another top dollar production. Unfortunately, I don't think they've gone into releasing all this stuff. I believe they have several episodes that are shot and probably sitting on a hard drive somewhere waiting for distribution.
Yep. Well, I bet that too. And, that's the thing about David. He doesn't do things small. He's not interested in doing small shows. He never has been. I don't know him incredibly well as a person, but he lives large. He does big things, and he's a perfectionist, and so that gets expensive, and that's hard to maintain. And even harder is to maintain investors, because you just can't have one. And maybe some people do have investors that last a long time. They're getting their payoff, but you need to have many, and so attracting investors is got to be incredibly difficult. And the competition in Vegas was probably big, and I don't know. you tell me, wrestling of that caliber, when we came out with the first WoW, it was hot. It was it. Everybody wanted it. And people still want it, but it's different now. It's much different now.
Very much so. And it's a shame, but I guess it is what it is. You moved away from the wrestling world, as you said, when WoW kind of ceased its production. Well, first off, how were y'all even notified of that?
Oh, we didn't. But there was talk. I mean, there was rumors around, and I was nervous about it because they started doing things like, well, you're gonna turn this in or turn that in, and I'll never forget. It was right after the pay-per-view. We had a giant meeting, and they were like, "Well, if you want your last paycheck, you got to bring your wardrobe in." And if I'd have known, I would just sacrifice my last paycheck because those boots were so great. I miss those boots so much. They were large, wrestling boots. They had flames on the side, and there's never been anything since then. I would have gladly traded that to have those boots back. But we went in there, and they were like, "Okay, well, what we're going to do is regroup, and we'll notify you, and good luck." But there was this really somber, just feeling about the place, and it was just kind of this abrupt finish. But, I kind of heard talk and thought that was what was going to happen, and it was really sad because, nobody wanted to believe that it was over, and people just tried to keep their spirits up. But once we walked out of that room, a lot of us didn't see each other ever again. We moved on to different things, and I took a show in Japan, and I was still kind of waiting for, I remember this producer that was hiring me for Japan. I was just kind of like, well, I don't know if the show's coming back or not, but, let's go ahead and do this, and we'll see. And I didn't hear from them for a very long time. And, I missed them, and I missed doing the wrestling. Everything seemed to be rolling. There was just all this buzz about my character. I thought maybe, I might get a call from WWF, but we didn't have agents. I didn't have any contacts to contact the right people to keep going. And I think that's just mainly why I disappeared from that circle. I would have gladly continued to do it because I was having a really good time and I was good at it. I didn't know why I was good at it, but it was just something that worked for me, and I would have loved to have continued, but I just didn't have the connections to maintain that career going. Otherwise, you would have seen the Riot on WWF or WWE, I guess now it is, and it would have been a whole different road. It would have been a much different thing.
Do you own the name Riot, or is that something?
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
I don't. David McLane holds all that stuff.
Okay.
And so that was the thing, when I went to go to wrestle for other things, they want you to wrestle under Riot. And I said, you're going to have to talk to Dave about that. That's the kind of thing. And when I talked to him, he's like, well, as long as you're not selling a bunch of merchandise and things like that. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm just, appearing. And he was like, no, that's fine. As long as, you're doing things that are pro for the good things for the sport and not negative things for the sport, we're okay with that,
Okay. So there was, in the case of you in your 2013 appearance match with Angelina Love, there was no issue with Riot appearing there.
Well, he didn't really seem to have an issue with it. I talked to him briefly on the phone and everything, and he had asked me about it, and I'm like, I just told him what it was, and, I don't really feel like I was really even asking permission. He had just contacted me and said, oh, you're wrestling again. I'm like, oh, I got an offer, and that was the first time I ever thought that might be a problem or anything, but David didn't seem to have a problem with it. He just wanted to make sure that, like I said, David doesn't like to exploit women in a sexual way, and he probably was way more aware than I was at the time and still am now about what the wrestling world can mean sexually, and, he was like, well, it doesn't seem like a show that does that kind of thing. So he was okay with it because he didn't really want WoW to have he's had problems, from what I understand, with some other people that maybe had done something sort of backyard that was more sexual, and he didn't like that. So that was his main concern, that he didn't want to have, it to be all TNA and everything like that. He wanted it to be respectable because the name WOW, in order to get it, I think, on the air like it was, or have pay-per-views, is, it really he just didn't want it to be smut. And I think that, and while I'm pretty sure that he knew that about me, that was never something that I ever was interested in selling or doing in that way. So no, David didn't have a problem with me, but I could see where he would. I don't own the name Riot, and I don't know all the legalities of that. I never really cared to really push it. I'm sure you look at The Rock. I mean, he had to do a couple of movies under the WWE, under the name The Rock for a while, until he was able to just work out on his own. So I'm sure that there's some sort of legalities of it.
Oh, I'm sure.
As long as you help each other, it's just trying to maintain good business. I don't want to burn any bridges.
Of course, and for those that would like to know the example that April's talking about, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, before he was using Dwayne Johnson, worked out as The Rock, and I think the agreement at that point was that Vince McMahon, the owner, got a little kickback off of that, and he got executive producer title without having to do anything for letting them use the name. So, yeah.
Well, and he was, and that show created him. I mean, of course, it's a team effort. Dwayne Johnson is great. He brought The Rock to life. It's not like you could just put anybody into that position and he could do it. So if that had happened to me, like say I had went off to WWF, they probably would have had to get the legality rights to it, and David would have gotten a kickback. And then if I had done movies, I would have done the same thing, because they help you, you help them. You give them a kickback because they made this star out of you, and eventually that wears off, and then you're on your own. But everybody needs to be paid.
That's right. Keyword: everybody needs to be paid.
Yeah.
So in today's world, stunt woman, actress, writer, I think I saw under your name as well. What is your genre of choice as a writer? And I like violence, and I never thought. I watch a lot of different things, but I tend to write little avant-garde pieces. I'm working on this pilot now that is about a girl who accidentally kills and eats her boss. And then she finds out she's from a long line of cannibals. I was like, how did you accidentally eat somebody?
It's easier than you think. Not that I know, but in my imagination, it's easier than you think. Someone pushes you too far, things happen.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how my character, she's sexually aroused by her boss, and he attacks her, she kills him, and then she's got to figure out what to do with it, and then things happen. So it's kind of, I try to add comedy into the darkness about it, but I like writing violence. I have a couple books out there, and one I'm working on right now is sci-fi, and just different worlds, and fighting for justice and all that. And I really want to work in TV. I want to be a creator and write shows that are new and fresh, but that people can relate to, because everybody has a little bit of darkness in them, and how you deal with it and how you deal with the things that we have in life. I'd like to write, I love Orange is the New Black. I like that kind of thing. Of course, Breaking Bad. And it's just about the anti-hero. I think that's me. I've never been that sort of blonde Barbie doll that, Hollywood kind of expects out of its women. I've always been this sort of girl on the side who, pushes and fights to get along, and that's kind of what I like to write about. So now my career is going in that direction, and I'm, it's a little later. I wrote a long time. Like I said, I was going to try and write for the WCW, and I've always been interested in that, but because I was successful in my stunt career, it's really hard to transition and get out of that. You're making money, you're having fun, and so taking a leap to start over in something new is hard, and it is new. It's not like you can just, I'm working on film and I'm just going to jump over to the writer's office. If I had known back when I was doing these huge stunts that, I could have negotiated for something and done a sideways move, I probably would have. But who does that? You're working all the time, you're doing great, and you don't want that to end. And so then when it starts to fizzle out, or you choose to make it fizzle out, then that's when I'm now kind of at the grassroots of it, starting over, building, meeting new people. And there's definitely a line. It's the camera line. If you're in front of the camera, it's really hard to, unless you're incredibly famous or well-connected, to maneuver yourself in a behind-the-camera position.
Okay. Now, these
so that's
things,
what I'm doing.
and bravo, first off. Are these things that you're writing for your benefit? Like, are you writing something like, hey, this is a show or movie that you would like to star in, or is it just writing just for the sake of I have a story and I want to kind of get it out there?
It's a lot of just writing. I wouldn't turn down a role. I've written some movies that I've seen myself in roles. But then, of course, I've met a lot of actresses that I would love to work with. And there's something really great. Like I had said, this transition about, what I would be interested in the wrestling is the creation of it. I mean, at some point, you take yourself out of in front of the camera a little bit to sort of create this giant beast of a thing. And you there's a lot of awesome things that can happen when you're kind of in control of the story and control of direction of it, producing of it. And I'm really interested in that kind of thing. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to doing a role here and there, and I've gotten calls for this and that, and I wouldn't turn it down. But I'm putting more of my efforts into writing and getting my work out there so that I can be in the creation part of it. It's really fulfilling to begin something and see it all the way through. When you're talent, you kind of come in, you're somebody else's vision, and then you create that, you're on for a short time, and then you're done. But, if you're in the producing aspect of it, you're there for the whole run. It's a whole project. It's more. It's just so much more.
Producing is such a task. It is.
Yeah.
It's a headache. I mean, it's fulfilling when you can get it done, but it is such a task. And I only
never gonna do it again.
Yeah, you try. And all I can say is I'm even doing it on a small scale. I can't imagine trying to do it with millions of dollars at your disposal, or at least trying to acquire millions of dollars. We are at the part of the interview where we get down to the random questions, April. This is where I just pull some out of my hat, so to speak, and you fire me off an answer.
All right.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Does April Littlejohn actually run around with a baseball bat?
No, I'm terrible at ball sports. Like, I can't hit a ball at all, so no, I don't. However, I will tell you that wielding that bat was not a hard thing for me, because I've used so many weapons in martial arts. In Kung Fu, which is my main martial art right now, there's so many different weapons. And so you get so much practice on these different weapons that a bat is just an extension of another weapon. It could be a sword, lightsaber, whatever you will. I mean, you can do so many things with it. But no, I don't even own a bat. I think that a bat in my hands would just be really a waste of wood.
you should have. You know what? You should have kept the bat. If you could have got away with anything, you should have kept that bat and just carve your name into it or something. Just a little memento. Just Riot was here. You know what I mean?
I love here.
Tell me about the most significant piece of artwork on your body.
Oh, I have an entire sleeve of the 8 Immortals. Now, in Chinese history, there's 8 drunken immortals. You've probably heard of drunken Kung Fu. Mm-hmm. They traded in their lives for immortality, and each of them have a different story. And so it goes all the way down my arm. Of course, tattoos are always a work in progress, and when you get the time and the money, I just get more and more inked up. My whole back is covered, and my whole arm is covered, and I intend to one day have my whole leg covered. tattoos are part of my life, much to my mother's chagrin, but I love them. They're beautiful. It tells a story, and it's definitely something that makes me very unique.
Well, you definitely have a story there. I wasn't expecting to get that, but I mean, you actually have like Chinese mythology on your body now. So,
Yes, I do.
That's incredible. Next question.
Well, that's interesting. If I could just tag on that, I get these tattoos, a lot of them for every martial arts belt I've had. So every time I'm ready to test, I would get one. And this one was, I was going to test in Tibet this year for my master level, and then I got hurt, and I wasn't able to do it. But just as though my sleeve is not done, I feel like that part of my training is not done either. And so these tattoos, they're pieces of history, and then they go onto my body, and they kind of tell not only the story of the history, but also mine. You know, every time you see a tattoo, it's attached to tons of blood, sweat, and tears of my kung fu training, and so that's where they come from.
Okay. That is interesting. I didn't know that you were getting your belts overseas. I mean, my goodness. Who sang the Ballad of the Unknown Stuntman?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Who sang the Ballad of the Unknown Stuntman?
Oh my goodness.
I only threw this in because you're a stunt woman.
Yeah, I know, and there's probably thousands of stuntmen out there that are cringing, but I don't know. I mean, I have been filled with all these early stunt histories of, Lee Majors as a stuntman, and, Hoosiers and Burt Reynolds and all the greats, but I don't know that. I don't know. You probably do.
I do. And you know what? You actually said his name right in there. You didn't. You fired out his name, but you didn't fire it in the as the answer. Lee Majors.
So I lose it.
Lee Majors. He sang the Ballad of the Unknown Stuntman for the opening theme of The Fall Guy.
I didn't know that. That's a nice piece of history. That's good.
Yeah, it was even better that I think he hit like number 1 in Germany. Which he
David Hasselhoff, right?
Yeah, he joked about that. He's like, yeah, I hit number 1 in Germany, but then again, so did David Hasselhoff. So what does that tell you? So
yeah, pop culture. It's weird.
That's right. I'm a pop culture guy. Do you like B movies?
I do like B movies. I appreciate when they, make a big splash and more people get to see them. I think you have a lot more freedom in B movies, and you do a lot of really interesting, creative things in B movies.
Indeed. The tag to that question is, have you seen the documentary Electric Boogaloo, the wild untold story of Canon Films?
Of course.
Okay.
Electric Boogaloo? Are you kidding?
And you said that with oof. My goodness.
Well, I think I remember seeing it, cause, my mother didn't let me watch a lot of, things. And so when she would go out on dates or whatever at night, I would sneak into her bedroom and watch it. You watch a lot of different things that I probably wasn't supposed to, but that made it all the more exciting.
Ah, indeed. Well, we all did as kids, so, that works. Is it harder to get off the ground a new TV show or an independent movie?
I think a TV show, because there's so many more people that have their say in it, and to get airtime, that's changing, with online platforms, but you got to do it in a different way. A film, though, you can, independently produce and get backing. I did a couple of independent films that went to festivals and such like that, and so I think it's a lot easier to get a film made.
Okay. Name me a guilty pleasure of yours.
Well,
you don't have
I like to go get Chinese foot massages. There are these great little places that cost like $20. You sit in a little lounge recliner and you have person working on your feet and your back, and you don't have to get all oiled up or anything and be all gross. So you just wear your clothes and cheap. It's like a little vacation.
Okay. So that is Riot's guilty pleasure. Now is the portion we call fantasy booking. This is where you, as the talent, get to book your own angle and or storyline against whomever, wherever you would like to. And I guess in this case, it would have been in the WoW universe. You give your pitch for what Riot would do, and then I will give my pitch for a fantasy booking or storyline for what I think Riot should do.
Well, I'd like a rematch against Wendy Wheels, and I would like it to be like this secret thing where we trick her to come out into a surprise venue, and then all of a sudden, like, Poison jumps in and demolishes me, and they team up against me, and I reach out to the audience and grab a fan, and all of a sudden we're like it's a fan duo. It's me and a fan taking on both of them.
Mm-hmm. And you just thought of that on the fly?
On the fly.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I am genuinely impressed.
Well, that's good. Maybe it'll happen.
Well, see, now I'll give you mine. See, well, I'd like to see Riot to come back to WoW today with an axe to grind against David McLane for overlooking her, saying that you should have called me from the get-go. I should have been number one on your list. She tells him that she's going to wreak havoc over that entire promotion and his roster until I get you in the ring one-on-one in an intergender match.
Nice. Yeah, I think that would be really interesting. David McLane probably wouldn't be too happy about that one.
He probably wouldn't be too happy about it. I don't know if he's particularly happy with me anyway, so it's okay. It's all right. I've exchanged emails with the guy, but we haven't gone at great lengths to discuss anything in particular.
Yeah, he can be dismissive sometimes, you know. I think that if you were to make a big splash somewhere, he'd probably take notice and you couldn't help it, bring you in on something.
Oh, well, you know, if that were to happen, that would be wonderful. But we're on different coasts, and I think my method of dealing with wrestling is slightly different than the WoW method. Not as quite as
yeah.
much.
I think it is a very independent method. He's got his own way of doing things, that's for sure.
But that's okay. So yeah, that's why I enjoy young ladies like yourself who are willing to come in and open up the doors of WoW. So even if I don't have a direct route into that, I can discuss it with persons like yourself and like Erica Porter, Lana Starr, and Bronco. I think she might have been the first one of WoW that I did. Now, I don't know what their relationship is anymore, because you said something about people doing shows that didn't quite jive with the WoW vibe. I know she kind of took a route off into that, but that's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
To anybody that wants to hear that interview is up on the Women's Pro Wrestling Network YouTube channel. Just scroll back a couple of episodes and you will see the Bronco Billy interview, and you can get whatever information that you choose to get from that. So there we have it. We have gone through a full interview with Riot, and she has given far more information than I ever thought possible about her career in and out of the ring, her injuries, WoW as a promotion, her life preceding WoW, and as a stunt woman, and all that good stuff. You have been an open book.
Well, I'm glad I could add to your broadcast for sure.
Well, I am glad, because now I can put it up for those people that are saying, hey, when's Riot come back? Can you get Riot? So for those people who have asked that question on numerous occasions, and where is she, what's she doing, now is the time that you can sit down and listen to this in full and get all of your jollies and, you know, get your questions answered. Now, here's the last thing that we have to put out there. For clarification's sake, Riot has no interest in pursuing any independent wrestling from promoters that may be excited that you've come out of the blue and are still around and still alive, but you're not on the market, correct?
Well, I mean, it just depends on what kind it is. Like I said, I'm not interested in throwing around a bunch of hard hits anymore, but, as far as the process goes, if it's a good show and somebody wants me to do an appearance or, do a commentary or anything like that, I'm always open to things like this too, talking about it. It's such a great time in my life. I miss the fans. I feel really bad that we didn't get to spend more time, because every time I've met the fans, they're really great. I've met a lot of really great different personalities. Some of them I consider friends. I even have Facebook friends that still are fans of the wrestling, and, they send me all kinds of great things, and it really has been awesome to keep me involved, even though I was only a part of it for a very short time. It's nice. It's really, really nice to know that I'm still thought of, and people are still rooting for me. That gives me a lot of confidence to go in the future and, make a name for myself in a different way, and hopefully bring those fans along with, my writing and anything that I can produce. And hopefully, I won't let them down. I'll still write and do things in the same vein that they expect. So I look forward to, hearing things and getting emails from people in the future. It's always a nice treat.
And speaking of that, for those that, you said that you are open to it, I guess depending on the pitch from whomever it may be, if some of those promoters or I assume even fans would like to get in contact with you, do you have a preferred method of communication?
Well, honestly, it's like I do a lot of things through Facebook, so you can feel free to message me. I try to, depending on my mood, to get back to everybody, and so far I feel like I've gotten back to most people if they have questions. Sometimes, people are just like, really, they say, I really liked what you did and everything, and I have a blog on WordPress that I do post from time to time. Not so great about that. I have responded to those things. And, and usually anybody who is an up-and-comer or anybody who comes to me with, wanting to know what I did or how I did it, I'm always open to that kind of thing. So I would say just look up April Littlejohn on Facebook, and I have not only my own personal site, but a page of how you got a hold of me, and I try to be pretty prompt about that kind of thing.
And you were, and I do appreciate you for it. And I also add in, just for the sake of saying it, that perhaps people who are not just producers of wrestling, if you are a producer of film or independent film or something like that, you may want to acquire Ms. Littlejohn's services. You can contact her the same way I did via Facebook. Scroll and find April Littlejohn, and she has responded very promptly to me. So hopefully she will extend the same courtesy to you, as long as you are courteous to her when you deliver the message.
Absolutely.
So there we have it. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode. I'm elated that I was able to catch April and get her to join me on the show. And I hope that I'm not going to say I hope, she provided a great deal of information, and I hope that you all found it entertaining. I will plug her site or her Facebook page one more time. You can find her, April Littlejohn, if you are looking for some sort of business endeavor, or if you just want to drop her some fan mail. Also, go by our page, Women's Pro Wrestling Network on YouTube. You can go by Women's Pro Wrestling Network on Facebook, which of course this interview will be linked to, and you can go to WPNWrestling.com. All of those sites will feature and house interviews such as this, and we all appreciate your support. So thank you, everybody, for joining me on this podcast, and Riot. We love you all, folks.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments, please contact us via our Facebook or our YouTube channel at the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. If you're new to the WPN, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like our page. We appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening.